Everyone.
What are they? Bulgarians.
Chinwee speaking first, Adil speaking second, Ashish speaking third, Chinwee in reply, he for all of us. Well, they as well, yeah.
Actually, it's doing web, is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, who's doing reply again?
Chinwee.
Yeah. Oh, rather important information. Which motion are you doing?
Okay, we'll debate motion 1, they'll debate motion 2, and we'll both sum.
Excellent.
No. Social media.
Access.
Parents,
Access social media things.
Tinder.
Of little children who date people.
So, debate about allowing parents to stop a Tinder account.
That's horrible. Room. This is room.
No.
Okay. Anyway,
You face the camera over there.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm just making time while we
That will be fine. No.
this way.
Yeah, because speakers will be speaking from there.
Yeah, so it'll be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this chair.
Yeah.
Everyone please come and speak on the chair.
Okay, yeah.
Not on the chair.
Okay.
Sit there like this. Like this.
Yes, Ashish. Okay, without further ado, on the motion that we broadly discussed, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister. Please keep your own timings. We'll try our best to that, but we are very likely to not do so in a student session.
We think when national security is at stake, companies like Apple, jokes, but kids aren't terrorists, aren't they? And the motions are actually the same, aren't they? Because if you think about it, in the old days, if you were a parent and you chanced on your child's diary, something that your child never told you, I mean, maybe your child did tell you that they had a diary. Probably knew that the child was writing some things in it that weren't explicitly meant for your eyes. The other side of the house would say, in such situations, the parent should never open their child's diary. I think it's kind of odd, because to the extent to which parents exist as not just the moral guardians, the people responsible for and responsible to their children, they're also the first points of care for those children. The people who take their sustenance from them, who take their guidance from their parents. Their parents are the first point of response with which they need to recognize when something is going wrong in a child's life and need to be able to know that. What is our model on our side of the house? So obviously we think that this is mostly an abstract kind of debate. We're just going to try to vitiate this to make sure that some kind of real world basis. So obviously parents have to offer up some kind of identification at a point at which, so perhaps when kids sign up for social media accounts, parents will be able to write them to the same companies, identify, say, this is my child, this is who I am. They'll be able to therefore gain a form of read-only access on a request basis. So that's not to say that, so it's not to say that parents will be given like a permanent password to be able to snoop on the content of their child's social media account, but it's to say every single time the parent makes a request to the company will offer them a one-time password that perhaps has a time period of expiry for their account. So the point here is that doesn't need to be like a reasonable warrant. It's the case with Apple's debate. So like the reasonable warrant is the fact that you are the kid's parent and then you can view the kid's social media account. I think this is the fairest possible way to start this debate. We don't want to be super sneaky about it. Okay, so that's the model. I hope there's no complaints on that. I'm going to talk about firstly the nature of social media and the sort of specific harms, quite direct ones that happen. Secondly, I want to talk about the conversations that kids perhaps aren't having with their parents anymore and why they might have them in this world. And lastly, I want to talk about overcoming technophobia and why we have to come to that. So the first thing on social media. So I think the first thing we need to recognize is that social media is a space which parents probably have very little access to control with. The first thing I might say is that the degree of connection that parents have with the children, whether through its fault of their own, or just like the forces of modern technology and society, probably been obviated over time. So kids now spend more time online than with neighbors and people who have direct connection to them. They spend their time in these spaces which are very fluid. The ease of connection to strangers, especially on social media platforms, where first you can hide your own identity and craft it as you please. Alternatively, be anonymous. It's true both for the children using these platforms, as well as these strangers and adults who may be speaking to them. So this is a very obvious leads to the potential for harm, either through things like sexual grooming, when you like talk to someone who is actually a pedophile but pretends not to be, or when you are able to access harmful things that you that you otherwise would not be able to access, because these connection between these spaces that are dangerous and the spaces that are safe in a child's life are now, the distance between these things is now reduced. So you're able to do things like procure crystal meth on the internet, even when you're really young and without anyone really knowing things about that. Or gaining access to things like radical Islamic ideas, which are really, and all of these things probably are the sorts of things that are illegal and things we do not stand for adults, but also there are things which are less illegal and we probably wouldn't stand for children, because they are not rational adults, not able to judge which of these things are good and bad. Yeah.
Apologies if this is a bit quickly, but if they can only ask to see one post or picture at a time, how are they supposed to detect the kids buying meth or like downloading Islamic propaganda?
Right, so obviously it's like a one-shot, you can only have one use, right? So the point is parents presumably will, many parents might periodically check on their kids, right? And some other parents might only check on their kids when they think their kid has a problem, whatever, right? So obviously different parents will check on their kids different. This is probably fine for the I've also lost my timing, so if anyone else is timing for me, that would be helpful. Right, so I think the kind of harms that we're talking about here are fairly significant. We're talking about children who are now exposed to sexual predators, who are now exposed to drugs that they cannot make choices about. That's something that the parents probably ought to have some degree of knowledge of, and probably ought to be able to hit off with our policy, either by periodic checks, or perhaps if you think your child's behaving oddly, and you sense a sense of alarm without really knowing why, now you're able to access information and head off the child's descent into something far more deep. So that's really obvious. But I think the other thing to say, and this one is just gone, so it's really useless. So I think the other thing to say is that during conversations that people have in social media are probably positive on our side. And the thing is this, right? Kids today who access social media often use social media at the unexplained, unexplored space of audiences they don't know, or people they somehow trust on the internet, and so on and so forth, to spill forth their deepest thoughts, or passive-aggressive statuses about how sad they feel, and about whether they might be possibly depressed, or expose things about themselves concerning emotional well-being that are unwilling to tell their parents. Why are these children unwilling to tell these things to their parents? In some cases, and I think Papa probably spend most of the time with these cases, that's because it's an essential, stark, known dividing opinion between your opinions and your beliefs and your parents. In others, it's simply because you don't feel comfortable speaking to your parents about certain issues, even though in your heart of hearts you probably know that your parent ought to know about the concerns you are facing. And more importantly, your parent is the only person who is best equipped to help you about these things you are facing. So you're talking about things like mental health, talking about kids who are facing issues like bulimia or have suicidal tendencies. These children need help. And if they are expressing their help on social media, no one particularly useful is accessing that information in a direct fashion. It is as if the parent chancing upon a child's diary saw entries which amounted to a cry for help. In those instances, the news in which we spill our deepest thoughts are now accessible to the parents once more, in a way, in a world before the existence of two-factor authentication and complicated passwords. That's something that's a good outcome on our side. But finally, I think parents are often technophobic about these new technologies in a really unsurprising way, because these technologies understand they veil their kids' lives from yourself. I think giving parents access or the ability to access these technologies and their kids' lives on them in a separate space probably makes parents more willing to accept in the first place, which makes them less likely to do things like ban your kids from using smartphones with the attendant benefits that come from it. So I think we get a more comfortable relationship between parents, technology, and their kids and their lives on those spaces. That's a benefit on our side.
Okay, I'm thankful. So,
Thank you. Let the Prime Minister now like to guide the Leader of Opposition. Here, here.
So let's just be clear, yeah? This is not like a parent taking a peek into their child's diary, because in the information age, social media is literally interwoven into the very fabric of our lives. If you follow me on Instagram, you can literally trace every bar I've been to. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you can probably make a good approximation of what I want to do with my life in the future. But the reason why this is important is because more so than just a diary, social media is an approximation of a child's life, and more importantly, also essential is identity construction. And that's what I'm going to bring to you in my two constructive materials today. First, on how proposition violates a child's right to identity, and second, how they specifically harm vulnerable minorities in societies. First, on violating a child's right to identity. Now, we argue that privacy is important, not just for something private using principle, but to protect identity, to allow people to construct their best selves. And when your identity is considered, who you want to aspire to be, what you want to do, the good life that you see fit to lead, that's when we can dignify you as a human being. And how do we best enable people to dignify themselves, to allow them to explore alternate identities, explore alternate visions of themselves? This is why privacy is so important for children. Two reasons. First, because privacy allows children to explore alternate identities. Imagine if I were born in China and I really wanted to be a reporter, but my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Oh no! If they find out that I want to be a reporter on Facebook, they might get in touch with the teacher in charge of my local press club and bar me from all future activities. You just screwed my life over eternally too. We think that privacy is essential for protecting identity. It ensures that information which matters intensely to you won't be used as emotional blackmail. What if I'm a progressive Democrat in an extremely conservative household, and I just don't want to jeopardize my relationship with my parents, but at the same time, I want to be able to be part of the, school's environmental club, even though my parents deny global warming. We think that your relationship with your parents is so true, and your relationship with your parents is as important to you as your ability to construct identities. And we think, especially in the formative ages of childhood, it's so important. Why? Because it's the only time in your life where you can explore. Because you have the freedom of youth. At the point at which you are locked into an identity later in life, for instance, if I went on to medical school and halfway through my course, I'm like, surgery is not really cut out for me, but I just invested $1,000 in it. You've already wasted thousands of dollars, resources, time, and money that can never be returned, right? In the course of your life that you don't actually want to be. Or what if you get married due to social expectation and pressure? And halfway through you realize, maybe married life is not for me. Maybe I'm like you, and we think that when you are allowed to explore in your early stages of life, make sure you don't get imprisoned by circumstances and imprisoned by the expectations that your parents have set on you. Or we think more importantly than this, we think the virtual space is now virtually equivalent to real life, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, being so integrated in the lives of our youth. This is literally not like young having belief, just being able to see like one post a day. This is literally like having a parent stand next to you all the time, knowing who your girlfriend is, knowing where you are at every point of your life, right? But importantly, what about all this constructive material? What about crime? What about suicide ideation and cyberbullying? And we admit, these are important things. Let's talk about crime. Now, we're not talking about really poor neighborhoods, obviously, on both sides, because in these cases, you're working multiple jobs, you've got 6-day work weeks as a parent, you're not likely due to parental neglect to be really looking after your children in these really poor neighborhoods. Just not the time, right? It's unfortunate reality. So what he's really talking about, and he conceded this, is about rich white guys smoking crystal meth or weed. We argue that the scope and scale here, what's true, right? The scope and scale here is not significant, because we don't think that the incidence of, guys smoking weed is at all, right, outweighs the fact that there are thousands of children out there who need to define the best lives for themselves and explore from the comparative groups. But secondly, even if it was significant, they wouldn't be putting this on their social media accounts. I posit that people don't sell crystal meth through Facebook chat or Instagram direct message. Like guys you want to limit your digital trail, right? It's not as if like a criminal dealer could be so dumb as to be able to do this. And if he could, they would be able to bust him through police court. Please don't be facetious. But let's talk about suicide ideation. And I'll argue to you that very often we can't tell whether somebody wants to commit suicide from their online persona. You often want to project an image of yourself as coping well with it. And very often, only your closest friends know about your mental illness. But guess what? With their policy, you take them over into further depression and further mental sexuality. One. Now I as a depressed child think, even my parents don't trust me. They need to be monitoring me at every stage of my life. The last remnant of my private self has been stripped away by the people I thought loved me. That's often what pushes me over the precipice. Second response. How many times are parents the cause of your psychological problems? How many times do you slip into depression because your parents want you to be somebody you don't want to be? How many times are you bulimic because your grandmother has told you, girl, you're too fat? Very often, it's these familial pressures that are the very cause of the psychological distress, and having more parental oversight rather than less is a terrible idea. Finally, how would a parent know how to deal with depression in many circumstances? They haven't proven that. You know, very often, a parent tells a child is depressed. This is true. I have a lot of friends who are depressed, and they tell me that parents tell them, just feel happier. It's just a passing stage of your life. Very often, they're not going to take either. You don't have any kind of panacea for these problems at your side. Don't try to delude me, okay? Then I told you about sexual grooming. Now, I argue to you that the best way to look out for sexual grooming is to teach the child how to be able to better cope with online predators. Why? Because at the point in which you learn how to deal with online predators, we don't have to be constantly monitoring you and run the risk of a sexual predator actually grooming you. But crucially, this works better on our side, because children are more likely to trust what their parents tell them when we foster a relationship where children can approach their parents when they are secure in their identities and secure in their lives. And more importantly, they don't feel this constant overhang of distrust every time a parent says, son, you need to talk, it's serious. But second argument on harms to vulnerable minorities. We think, ladies and gentlemen, that there are loads of oppressive norms in society imposed on the children by their parents. But social media allows children to break out of echo chambers that have been created by geography and culture. What if I'm a gay child in Indonesia, but all my parents and my neighbors say is, gay bad, you'll go to hell? What if I'm newly converted Muslim teen in America? We think three things are essential about social media privacy. First, psychological support. For the first time in my life, I'm able to know that there are people like me. They live the same struggles. We share a common identity. And this is actually very important to actually pierce through the crushing loneliness that a lot of vulnerable minorities, especially children, have. Second, information and support. How are we going to be able to reach out to other gay children in a conservative school because everyone is afraid of being outed as gay? How am I able to approach my counselor when I know my counselor might tell my parents? Transpose this to an online community that is thriving, able to give advice, for instance, on how best to come up to your parents. For instance, when you have economic independence, then you might want to come up to your parents. And you want to drop hints to your parents so that they're more prepared later on. Finally, we think hotlines and self-help advices isn't enough. You need a very living community you can interact with, to feel like a dignified human being, and to feel you have a sense of support. Because we're better for children, we're better for minorities. I am incredibly proud to host.
Alright, thank you. Opposition, I'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister.
Yeah. I will move face to organize this. Oh no, it's cool. I'll just order it. Just give me a minute. There's not much to say. Okay, right. It's in the week. coming out from Eldo is generally very bad for the simple reason that it's rather unnuanced and high parenting rhetoric they are trying to put out here. So we don't see then why in general that they see fit to preserve the many other ways in which parents forward their own children's interests, in which parents already determine the religions, the books, the schools, the income, the access to the cell phone, the computer, and the internet in the very first place, which they preserve and yet see fit not to extend to this particular sphere. So we don't know why they do that. But let's start first then with rebuttals before I move on to a whole bunch of re-encouragement. The first thing that we have to talk about is about the idea of anti-parenting and alternate identities. Are kids able to deviate from their parents should they not have access to social media? Here's the thing. Once upon a time, we tell you that kids were probably, yes, clamped down upon and had less space when they didn't have social media access. But at the same time, we also tell you that education has become more enlightened in this particular time. And that you can't just go to a damn school and say, I don't want my kid to be in your environmentalist club because I'm anti-climate change. You can't really do that in most modern public schools that enable children to access choices within a safe space, within places whereby it is definitely beneficial for the children. So we don't think that the parents can intercede in these particular spaces either. We think that at large, that the modern system of education does provide safe spaces and access to alternatives to these kids. But even more so than that, they told us that, wait, what if your parents find out that you don't want to be a doctor, but want to be a journalist instead? Well, we tell you, just like many people have in the past 2,000 years, you choose later in life when your parents can't stop you. People like Natalie Wong deciding to move out, get a scholarship, and do whatever the hell they want. So that's why we tell you then that nothing really changes under this particular paradigm in terms of limitations of children's choices. But wait, as an extension of this, they said, hold on a minute, you're going to trap these kids into particular echo chambers where they have no access to information. We tell you that any parent who is really that much of an asshole and conservative enough to police you in that particular way and ensure that you become a little, I don't know, right-wing Christian asshole, is also likely to apply filters to your damn computer. You're not going to be able to access it with or without social media. Hell, they'll even limit your access to the internet and the smartphone and computer in the very first place. So we don't think this happens in the realities that LO seems to be promoting. Why is it then that we think parenting policy is very important? Firstly, because we already told you that parents are given the right because the state's assumption is that they work for the kids' interest and welfare. They have yet to prove to us why parents are likely to treat their kids like shit. The second thing then is an informed, rational choice that kids simply don't have it. That's why we let the parents make the damn choices. Because yes, it might actually be a really bad idea to dream of being a poor, starving artist, which your 12-year-old brain cannot rationalize as being a really shit job, and rather take up the damn good education your parents will give you. The third thing then is that parents are the first line of defense to the many harms and abuses that children can and are exposed to. Some things they have yet to deal with, the fact that child grooming happens, 300 cases alone within London in a single year, courtesy of certain apps. But yes, that's the very thing. The threats are here and now. And to add on to that, the thing is, many predators or purveyors of illegal vice have moved their space online, precisely because it is anonymous, precisely because you don't need geographical access to these people, precisely because you can talk to pretty much anyone on your social media chat group. And that's why, again, the risks have increased to the point where we say, look, if the risks are that high, where in the past we determined whether or not children could access drug dealers. Oh wait, they couldn't access drug dealers in the past because they were kids. They couldn't actually walk into the back part of town without getting kidnapped or something like that. But that's the thing, things have changed and we have to change along with them. The next thing they said is that we are likely to do worse for depressed kids. Here's the thing. If these parents knew the kids had depression or show any signs, the only way they could possibly know is via the damn chat with the best friend or the email traces on the support. Otherwise, the opposition generally means that the parents are kept entirely in the dark. They cannot even take any action at all, good or bad. It means that one, likely the microaggressions of "Ayah, you so fat lah" kind of thing, these sort of microaggressions are likely to continue unabated, rather than actually taking action to stop these particular things. But you know what parents provide as well? parents provide something very important in terms of support and access to certain things, which is where I'm going to launch into even more positive material right now. On the comparative of what children are likely to lose versus what children are likely to gain from our policy. One, we think that conservative parents who change are likely to actually, some of them, change their minds and access and try to understand homosexuality or your minority or whatever the hell new thing it is that you're trying out, as opposed to, as for every clampdown on gay kid that suffers from this particular thing, there will be another one who changes their minds because people legitimately care about their kids. But the second thing then is that they stop the child from hurting themselves in terms of access to drugs, in terms of sending self-incriminating sex to their boyfriend. On that level, they also stop others from hurting them in terms of sexual predators and bullying. Because we know that cyberbullying has moved into cyberspace as opposed to being visible bruises that you can just see on a person nowadays. Yes.
So first you tell me that parents are technocratic. Now you tell me every redneck killer Billy is going to install internet filters on the child's computer. Which is it and why?
Okay, look, there's obviously going to be a damn spectrum of things. And on the whole, we think that 90% of parents are likely to be cool and great, that the 10% who are likely to clamp down and be assholes already do, and that the marginal harm is therefore minimal to the kids. What are the interventions that parents are likely to take when they have depression, when they suffer bullying, or whatnot? Counseling and support, actual emotional support from people who care about you the most, 6 of the hour, all this stuff. Second, educate their kids. Teach them, give them information on STIs if they're having sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend, regardless of whether or not they're underage. But yes, provide, because you need money to take SSRIs and antidepressants and go to a psychiatrist. And that's why parents are best placed to do these damn things. And they can only do them if they have the damn information on their kids. So wait, here's the damn thing. They say that the parents are going to surely clamp down, but we don't really think so. Because now they have an invisible leash on their kids. In all likelihood, they can simply know if it really is troublesome, then yeah, take some corrective action or keep secret about it and take secret corrective action yourself. And that's why we think that children are actually far likelier to gain more freedoms from our policy than if they had nothing and all these suspicions.
And the Deputy Prime Minister now likes to buy the yellow. Here you are.
You want to talk about the Newman's case? I'm going to show you Newman's case. Perhaps our government has forgotten what it's like to be a child, maybe because you're too old, but let me tell you exactly how it works.
Shame.
So our side is not an anti-parenting side. We're telling you about the best way to parent your children. We are the ones who present the Newman's case. Firstly, by telling you that parents are only really intrusive in children's lives for the most part, right? They know when you're out of the house, they know which school you go to, or what CCAs you take, and at the point in which the only refuge is social media, that is the one modicum of independence, privacy, and dignity that we can afford our children. But the way I'm going to structure my speech is by dividing it into 4 areas, right? I see a quadrant. You have normal children, and you have vulnerable children, you have good parents, and you have bad parents. And I'm going to examine each of these groups in detail. Let's deal with the first quadrant, about normal children with not very good parents, right? So, will parents refrain from intervening in safe spaces like in school that is violence, right? At the point in which you can literally call out the school principal to scold your child over like bad test results, or to tell the principal that you better remove my child from a certain CCA, like debate, for example, because otherwise I'm threatened to pull my kid out of school. Yes, it has happened to certain River Valley kids. Some of you might know. So, or like for the matter for me, right? Like I wanted to join bowling in RI, but clearly my bowling requires you to buy certain equipment, and I don't exactly have money, but my parents do, and they forced me to go into MPCC instead. Parents do have a lot of power over their kids. Then you claim that, oh, at this point, you're just going to filter your phones anyway. No, in the same way that they say there's a spectrum, I'm telling you there's a spectrum. For those who be willing to filter your phones and ground you every single day, I can't do anything about this group of people. I'm sorry. But at the point in which there are certain parents who allow a modicum of freedom by not filtering their phones, but who according to their policy, are going to make search requests for their social media, on their social media like outlets, then obviously you're invading their privacy and impeding the ability to form identities anyway. So at that point, at the point in time in which there is a significant group of people who are indeed affected by this policy, no thank you, Jan. So essentially, all the chimney substantive materials still stands, right? That it prevents you from exploring, that it prevents you from making your own life choices or trying to explore what life choices you want. No, thank you. No, thank you. And at this point, right, under their policy, what happens is that a lot of these children will end up not posting the critical information on social media, which also, as a result, impedes them from exploring their identities vis-a-vis the other people who they interact with and vis-a-vis the other things they try to learn online. Right? And that is something that is deeply harmful for all the reasons that Cheung has already told you. No, thank you, Yan. The second group of people I want to talk about are the vulnerable children who have to deal with bad parents, right? So Cheung has already told you that in many instances, parents are indeed the cause of depression. Maybe they're overbearing, maybe they are abusive across the spectrum, right? Some of them are emotionally abusive, some of them are physically abusive, some of them are just, So there are a wide spectrum of parents who indeed don't necessarily have the best of relations with the children, which is very unfortunate, right? And at that point in which you are exposing the children's last modicum of sanctity of privacy to parents who are not sympathetic to their children, who do not enjoy a good relationship with their children, who are actively harming their children, you're causing a lot of harm, right? And that's with regard to normal vulnerable children, let alone your gay children, your atheist children, your transgender children, so on and so forth. All of these people stand to be harmed massively by policy because they stand to receive huge societal backlash from their families when they're disowned or sent to gay conversion therapy. These are the sort of things that we cannot stand for on the side of the opposition. At this point, the magnitude of the harm eclipses anything that you can talk about on your side. Third major group of people I want to talk about are vulnerable children with well-meaning parents. Firstly, many well-meaning parents don't deal well with issues of depression and anxiety. My father never really understood why I was anxious and why I couldn't do basic things. My mother never really understood what depression meant and how to deal with it. She was just like, why don't you try just doing this activity or that activity and you get you happier? No, that's not how it happens. Right? And at the point in which you are destroying the relationship of trust between parent and child, at the point in which your dignity is no longer respected, when even your last sanctity of privacy is being violated, what reason have people like me to live, or people like other people to live, precisely because your parents no longer respect you, you don't think they love you? Whether that's true or not, that is the perception that people have. If you want to talk about crime, for instance, selling crystal meth or buying crystal meth, let's face it, right? Social media is a bad way to go about doing it. You literally, if you're talking about people in poor neighborhoods who have access to these things, clearly all you have to do is ask a friend in school to buy it for you, and you don't even have to use social media in order to get your meth, your weed, or whatnot. If you want to talk about cyberbullying, the question is, parents will find out eventually about cyberbullying and these things at varying points in time. I accept the fact that in some instances, it may take a little longer. But uniformly, what's going to happen is that kids will trust their parents even less, and the sort of emotional backlash that they themselves will feel upon realizing that their parents has betrayed them completely sneeze any form of hope that you have for your policy. No, thank you. The last group of people I want to talk about are normal children with well-meaning parents, and this is why, and reasons why even this most fortunate group of people are harmed under your policy. But before I move on, I'll take
Right. So it's often a perceived and very obvious division of roles between children and their parents that creates the sense of tension and suspicion between parents and their children. Do you think it's more important for children to trust their parents or parents to be able to trust their children?
No, I think it's both are equally important because honestly speaking, you say, okay, parents should be able to trust their children. But how are they to trust their children if the children cannot trust them in return and therefore be able to share information with them, right? It has to be a reciprocal relationship. I'm going to offer you an alternative or substantive as to how that is going to happen. So first, right, respecting children's right to privacy teaches children to respect other people's privacy in turn. How children learn privacy is simple, right? They learn from authority figures, they learn from people you spend time around with because they need social acknowledgement, they reflect social norms, they imbibe social norms, like whether you stand at someone else's screen when someone else is doing something, for instance, or unconscious mirroring. So when what government side teaches them about privacy is that it's okay to snoop on other people. It's okay for your parents to snoop on you without you knowing or with you knowing. And even if you hate it, even in the minority of instances where you hate it and you consciously try to break free of the sort of mental models that your parents have engaged in, is it really so easy to break free of your parents' behavior, right? We like to think that we're better than our parents and we can change over time. But honestly speaking, given the fact that unconscious mirroring has been occurring for years, that is why a lot of people, when they're abused, they in turn take out their abuse on other people. They engage in abusive relationships. Similarly, for privacy, you are encouraging that sort of habits as well. And it's bad because trust between your friends. It destroys your ability to engage in meaningful emotional relationships that are mutually beneficial for both sides. If you have a girlfriend and you snoop on your phone, or you snoop on your girlfriend's computer and your communications because you think she's cheating on you, what the hell does that mean for any sense of relationship or emotional stability, right? Our model is better because although it is hard to promote trust between children and parents, at the very least we are trying, and at the very least we don't make things worse, and ultimately over the long run, children will learn to trust their parents. For all of those reasons, I urge you to go in opposition.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. I'd like to invite the government. Here.
Mr. Speaker, in the age of technological advancement, where kids are more able to interact on social media, we tell you that Jan's PO was based on the fact that your ability to check where your kid stands today in terms of his social media interactions and engagement with other aspects of social media is more likely for you to trust him there and then give him that freedom at the end of the day. We tell you it's far more likely on our side that at the point of time we can trust the kid and know in the back of your mind that you can check on him anytime over his interactions with social media. You're far more likely to give him more freedoms than be innovative and strict in your parenting and policing your kid. We tell you two key things in today's debate, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, we talked about are parents likely to abuse such a policy and how parent-child relationships have changed over the years and how this policy leads to better outcomes on our side. But more importantly, the thing that they ignored is the comparative harms and the number and the frequency and number and probability of those harms to the children in of itself. Yeah, I'd rather go to the second point first. Because we tell you that social media is a support for stranger interaction, Mr. Speaker. Things like Omegle, things like Ask.fm, things like Tinder are based on the concept of anonymous identity that a child or a person can keep on those social media. We tell you that act as a mechanism that act as a mechanism for anonymous interaction that you can have with other elements or other entities on social media. We tell you there's no mechanism existing to counter and to check and balance those interactions. So at this point in time, this forms a basis, as Jan and I both told you, for predators and other people on the internet to prey on your child. So at that point of time, what OP had to note and engage with you is the fact that these numbers, the ability or the number of people who are likely to prey on your child, who are likely to take unmanageable use of your child's something are much more than the likelihood of asshole parents who are likely to inhibit your child's freedom and strictness. We tell you, even in that scenario, even if those parents are likely to be assholes and inhibit your child's freedom, we're ready to make that trade-off to make the child more secure and make the child and make the parents trusting him enough to engage in the social media interactions at the end of the day. But more importantly, let us talk about why parents are not likely to act in such a way. Their point was that, parents are likely to act in such a way because they like to inhibit on your child's identity and his right to identity, etc., etc. We totally agree that a child's right to identity is important and it's important to mold his own notions within it. Their ability to mold those identities are not something that we are taking away on our side, Mr. Speaker, and that is really key to note. Because at the point of time where he tells us that you're not likely to join the environment club because now your parent can see that you joined it, you're likely that we tell you at the point of time where a school sends a consent form at home to make you join the environment club, it far more seems like it's an argument against parenting itself, not against social media. So then it seems like an anti-parenting argument, and he forgets with the formation of child-parent relationships come from and why they're crucial in this world, Mr. Speaker, because on our side, it is the one where parents can check who these interactions are with, but more importantly, who views the identities that these children mold and the notions that they keep. Who are the people who view these identities and act on these identities in that social media sphere? We tell you it's not likely, but more importantly, it's not likely that these children will change their identity and their notions of interaction on social media, because firstly, social media if you see, is very cultural, Mr. Speaker, because it's very pervasive in its nature of your ability to overshare stuff. That's the point at which parents are likely to find out under their scenario. People overshare stuff, people send weird pictures on Snapchat, and the pervasive nature of cultural engagement in social media, with respect to a large circle of the societal circle and friends sharing stuff on social media, is pervasive in nature, and you're not likely to change that or make that trade-off when you think that your parent might check on you one day. But more importantly, we also told you that in the past, we see a really close emotional connect that parent and children had with each other. Why is that? We gave you 3 reasons. Firstly, the physical proximity that these children had with their parents in the first place. The societal circles that they interacted with were very common and intersecting with each other. But more importantly, the interactions were monitored by parents with respect to the physical proximity and the emotional connect that they shared in the first place. That's why we told you that parental policing was a privilege, and the principle still exists irrespective of practical outcomes or the changing world that we see today. So in current technological advancements, we tell you are likely to widen this gap of emotional connect between parents and children, Mr. Speaker, and that is largely harmful because of the kind of emotional repercussions it has on both sides of that relationship, Mr. Speaker. We told you this gap is something that rightly leads to something harmful. So, because now in your emotional access and connection to your parents, talking about things which matter to you, like depression, like bulimia, like mental health issues, where parents are the best equipped actors to deal with your scenario in your cases, is harm, because at the point of time when you only share on blogs or with your friends and are not likely to share with your parents, and they have no access or no ability to make that claim or to check that information, we tell you that it's far worse on their side. So before I go on to show you why parents are more likely to act in the best interest of general principles,
Can I just clarify? So for the 50% of forcibly outed gay kids whose parents will reject them, as the previous speaker said, what recourse do you have for them, to be clear?
So you're telling me that at the point of time when the trade-off comes to let go of loving your child versus with putting in your beliefs of being like, I'm anti-homosexual, I'm still a Christian, oh child, you're 7 years old, go. You're telling me that parents are likely to make the trade-off of letting the child go is blatantly false and no analysis given. We tell you it's false, and people are more likely to make the trade-off in case of loving your child. And it's far more likely, even if they do, that the other 50% move towards the scale of accepting those homosexual behaviors. That is a benefit that is exclusive to our side. But more on general principles of parenting, Speaker, we tell you that the state already acts and makes people and parents act in the best interest of the kid. Their ability to make decisions for the kid stems from the above reason, Mr. Speaker. More importantly, the child's inability to make rational, informed choice, and secondly, parents are the first defensive mechanisms to whatever harm the child might face. Under their characterization, they say the parents are really fearful of where their child is headed. They have zero idea of how their child is shaping his identity. So at the point of time, that is true. We tell you that parents feel even more disconnected and disenfranchised as to how their kids interact on social media, and that leads to even more strict and policing parenting in the first place. And that's really harmful. But on our side, in the back of your mind, at the point where you know that you can check on your child's social media interaction, you're far more likely to have more trust and give the child more freedom in terms of social media engagement at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, we tell you that children do better, parents are more trusting of that child, and we tell you that we close social and emotional gaps between child and parent.
And the graph width, now let's invite the opposition width. Here.
So that was pretty lame, because essentially the case comes down to that parents are just fundamentally nice. And if they're not nice, at least they're fundamentally intelligent, so you have to deal with problems, right? Both of these claims are wildly untrue in a large number of circumstances, and that's why this is a very, very bad idea. 3 things. Firstly, privacy. Secondly, oppression. Thirdly, online risk, which is the bulk of their case, to be clear. Let's just talk about privacy. We hear that it's okay that your parent has access to all the other different kinds of lives you're trying to explore online, because after all, they won't really be able to control it, right? I think that's not true. Parents use informal control over the child's life all the time. It might not be like taking you out of the club, but telling your teacher, can you please ensure my child does not do this? Or, as you say, installing filters. They will know to install those filters unless they know the child is trying to access certain stuff in the very first place. That's why it was really pathetic when you said kids can just wait till they grow up and find out. Too late, you're in the wrong course. Money isn't put in. You don't have the expertise to apply for that degree, and you don't even know what it's like to live that alternate life to begin with. So they have to conceive that the number of lives people can explore is just going to be way, way, way smaller. Note how often, instead of rebutting our logic, you rebutted our example. They said, no, but it's just bad idea to be a starving artist. Maybe, but why do you want to be something else apart from a doctor, right? Maybe you want to be a human rights activist because you care about the lives of oppressed people, something like that, right? Why is it that kids do not understand when their parents tell them in daily life already that we want you to live certain kinds of life? They already have that information, right? The point is, how do we escape that bubble which the parents have put them in? And you haven't told us anything. When you yourself continue to say, speaker, parents control so many other things. Yes. That's the bloody point. It wasn't a principled concession. It was an indication of the necessity for one free space where they can be something apart from what their parents want them to be. So let's be clear, they have no response to all that stuff. You can't choose later in life. Let's now talk about oppression. They said, oh, well, parents love gay kids. Although the rate of suicide among gay kids in conservative Christian households is approximately 300 times the national average. I wonder how that happens, right? But let's rebut that logic. Parents intrinsically love children. That's not true. Often a parent loves a child in a very specific way because you have a certain vision of what the child is going to mean to you and your family. Maybe because you're going to control your family and continue your family line. Maybe because society tells you ought to have a child. Maybe because you think there's a certain vision of the good life and that's what your vision of your child is. When that vision is disrupted suddenly outside of the child's control, your reaction often is just, hey, that's why there are gay kids in Texas being kicked out of their homes whose parents tell them, no thank you, loving you means I do not want you to burn in hell forever, and if that means sending you to a gay correctional facility, that is what I'm going to do. So don't come to me with this bullshit about when the 50% of parents who don't accept kids, it's going to be fine. It is not fine. You forcibly out gay kids, you forcibly out trans kids, you forcibly conservative societies where the social stigma from engaging in religious conversion means you sometimes are literally deprived of food and water, so you're going to out them too. So let's be clear, it's not like, oh, 50% when parents don't accept, kind of okay lah, but oh my goodness, huh? Let's be clear, the harms that they're accepting are pretty bloody huge, right? Yeah, actually,
Can we cope with parents even if they're bad? So you kind of have to live with them anyway. The internet doesn't give you freedom from the parents in a real way.
Which is why you should listen to the first speaker speak, because obviously POS is also preempted. When we said you now have contact with a community of people who are like you for the very first time. Now you can get advice on how maybe if you do want to come up to your parents, how you should do it. What are the helplines out there, right? But here's the most obvious thing. What most gay kids will do, trans kids, minority kids are going to do, right? What they're going to do is just not use social media anymore in your world, because even if the parents start to be nice, they will be afraid. But when you take your identity offline to begin with, as the vast majority of them really will do in the long term, then all these support networks just disappear altogether, right? And as Chin told you, having a helpline is not enough. You need to be part of an actual living community who reaffirms you for who you are. So congratulations, you just made all the gay kids in conservative areas disappear off the online world, which is not good in terms of their mutual support. In the short term, of course, we do get all that oppression. It actually depends on how the government announces this now. I'm going to see both cases, okay? Right, so lots of oppression happening, really, really bad. So what do they have to counter all this stuff? Online risks. Let's be clear, the only advantage a parent has over a child is that they've lived a longer number of years. So what about having lived a longer number of years allows you to spot, let's say, online grooming? Because you yourself said these are new things. Parents haven't lived through online grooming. How do they spot online grooming when it happens? In fact, how are they not going to like underspot or overspot? Like, is everything going to look to them a bit creepy and romantic? Because oh, this lols, hearts, triple X's? I don't know. In which case, by my social life, or are they going to go, oh, this is just the way kids interact nowadays? In which case, they just don't know, right? So the one thing which parents have, which kids don't have experience, you yourself said, does not help them detect these things because they're so new, so unprecedented in the age of glorious technology, right? They said, oh, what about depression? We say, often, parents are the cause of depression because of the way in which they control their child's life. In which case, you make it worse, it's obvious. Okay, but what about the case of the parents generally trying to help? Like, experience shows that parents often do not understand what depression is, are skeptical of the child's claims that they have a mental illness, which just looks at them like, oh, when I was young, we had a hard life, we just walked it off. I think kids nowadays really ought to get better at this sort of stuff. That's the kind of thing many parents do say. right? Often they do not want to send a child to a counselor, because sending a child to a counselor means that your relatives will say, I don't know, I mean, Phoebe has got a slightly problematic child, I said she wasn't a really good mom, right? There are all these sorts of pressures, which means it's generally unclear if they're going to make things better or if they are going to make things worse. No, thank you. Then they talk about cyberbullying. Again, hugely unclear when you yourself say parents have never encountered cyberbullying in their entire life because it's so new, how they're going to detect it. Most of cyberbullying is repeated over an extremely long period of time and really, really subtle, right? So a common example of cyberbullying is someone in class in school gives you like a funny name with some backstory, and then everyone online keeps calling you these sorts of things. So everyone keeps sending you messages, even simple things like sending messages, hello, 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 over and over again. And in cases in the UK, the kids committed suicide because this was cyberbullying that's going on. How are parents supposed to negotiate the complexities of online communication when they've never before even sent a tweet or looked at a tweet, right? And let's be clear, the scale of the invasion of privacy here is absolutely vast. So just want to get like rather vague analogy about, oh, just reading a diary. It's not the case, right? You don't have conversations on a diary. You don't have pictures on a diary which show that, when you went out with John, you were dating rather than just having a bit of a boys' night out, right? This is information which you give parents, which kids can withhold if there is a diary. The problem is this. If, as you say, social media is so pervasive in the lives of people, this is a huge invasion of privacy. It's nothing at all like being able to open someone's diary. And look, you already spent the first 8 to 9 years of your life in close proximity with your parents. You already love them deeply and respect them because you know they have just lived longer and things called credit cards. So kids generally start from the default position that you should listen to what parents say. The problem is this. When should we move away from the default position? It is when there's one space where they can be who they truly are, and that's why we're very proud.
Alright, to close out the off case, now let's invite the reply. Here. Clap.
Okay, I'm going to ask 3 questions. 1, are we anti-parenting or simply anti-stalking? 2, on oppression, the government even bother with an alternative in this debate? And 3rd, on crime fighting, and where it's a really lame argument. First, are we anti-parenting or simply anti-stalking? On government, we heard, because we entrust parents with power over 80% of a child's life, surely it'll be okay if we entrust them with the remaining 20%. We countered, no. It is because we entrust parents with 80% of a child's life that we need them not to touch 20% of a child's life. The only reason we entrust them with so much of a child's life is because we preserve a sanctuary of safe space and identity. Let me argue our perception is correct because of our case. We understood the need to balance in this debate because in the majority case scenario, parents do an okay job. But every single parent in this world is imperfect. And therefore we need that sanctuary so children don't imbibe the unspoken prejudices and biases of their parents. Some parents, for instance, are great mentors, but happen to be extremely religious. We think that children should have the right to prioritize their parent-child relationship along with their religious identity at the same time. But what she argued was that some parents are really bad for their children, either knowingly or unknowingly. An argument that I started in my speech. For instance, if I'm a parent who doesn't want my kid to date someone from another race, they argue, but these are conservatives. So they're going to block your children's access to internet. They don't even live in a stone age internet hell. Then you argue, but these parents have the best interest of their kids at heart. So at the end of the day, when you expose yourself as gay to your parents, they will accept you. This is a massive characterizational convenience here. You cannot on one hand argue that these parents are so conservative that it's a wash, and on the other hand come and tell us, no, right? Like they're going to accept their children for coming out as gay. We argue exactly because we live in a world that parents exist on a spectrum. It's far more likely that at the point at which you out yourself as gay to your parents, because of their policy, maybe half of these families kick their children out. That is still far too many. If 1 in 2 gay children in Texas are kicked out of their homes, if 1 in 2 gay children in Indonesia are sent to homosexual therapy, we think that is 1 in 2 far too many. So we think by their logic, right, it's really nonsensical. So again, we're talking about oppression. This government even bother with an alternative. We told you 2 things. First, on the soft oppression of identity restriction, and second, on the hard oppression of bigotry and prejudice. First, on soft oppression, we argue that there's a limited number of lives that would potentially be. And this number of lives potentially diminishes every single year you need. And it's like a disgraph. It's not like a disgraph. So the longer you stay as a human being on this earth, the closer you asymptote towards one. On their side, that's okay, because net one will do it, why can't anyone else? That's a incredible argument of privilege. Just because one person can do it doesn't mean the logic on our side, guys. Please, okay? We need to dignify individuals by providing them the maximum ability to actualize. That doesn't give any of our arguments. But second, more importantly, what about the harm question of bigotry and prejudice? We argue that parents don't love their children. They love the idealized conception of what their child means to them. A boy in China, under the grip of a single child policy, doesn't just mean boy to his parents. He means the chance to pass on, for instance, the Lee family line. He means the chance, for instance, to become a doctor or engineer or someone famous. But I don't want that when I was in China. If I don't want that, what happens? My parents say, I better teach you the hard way. This is hard love. Without knowing that what they actually do is justify their prejudices. They might kick you out. They might, for instance, pull you out of a class that you really want to do. And that's terrible, because in their attempt to love the idealized perception of you, they hurt children and they diminish the options in the future. Finally, crime fighting. They argue times have changed. You know, we need to change to correct. But the technophobic redneck hillbillies that Young characterized are the worst possible agents we need to protect our children in these dangerous times. Who do we need to protect our children? Policemen like Adele, not parents that you yourself characterize to be technophobic. We argue that the ability to genuinely help the child is enhanced on our side, then better for the parent-child relationship. I've never been prouder in circles.
I think the reply to close this debate as a whole, Governor. Yeah.
Let's be clear, right? The main claim that we hear from opposition today is this idea that kids need the internet in order to be who they are. Why does this still happen on our world? Because in their world, what they say is every kid, right, for them to magnify this harm, not just the super paranoid, super gay people who know that their parents secretly are going to hate them, but everyone is going to go dark. Facebook's going to close down, and Snapchat, you know, where all the teens are, is going to vanish. But like, kids are really students. Social media is super pervasive. It's part of your life. You're not going to give it up just because you know that your parents can. Just like you didn't stop writing your diary just because you knew that there was a chance that your parents would find it in your drawer. Like, kids don't behave in this fashion, which means that all this stuff about identity access, all this stuff about talking to your friends on Facebook and making other gay friends who believe in the same things as you, or believe that you could be a starving artist, like what I'm probably going to be, like, you know, we discovered creative born in my body, and not a doctor. These people will be talking to you. So kids still had that space, right? It's a space that was not monitored by their parents in a way, much of their life was. They said, okay, the problem is parents already control too much of their children's lives, therefore we need to give them some space to their own. Well, two responses which we told you. Firstly, we told you the problem with parents is that they have real influence over these kids' lives, right? So if you wanted your parent to be able to, you know, come around to the idea of financing your arts degree instead of your medicine degree, your parents will probably be important, which is why they would say things like, eventually come out to your parents, you know, these guys don't matter, you couldn't just pretend that they did it. And at the point in which you did it, then you're leaving that family anyway. So even if we accelerated that process, you have quite a But the other thing we said, and we didn't really respond to this ever, was we said, the technophobia, and this is not Ludditism, right? It's just, I don't know this world that my parents are in, right? There is this online world that I do not understand very well. My children spend a lot of time in it. I do not know anything that they do there. That is the source of the fear and suspicion that parents have. The source of the fear and suspicion that causes parents to do things like place restrictions on their children's ability to access a smartphone and things like that, and then therefore trade off the intended benefits that they wanted to get these children. And the point was, when parents know that there is 20% of their kids' life that is forever veiled to them, not because their children may intentionally veil it to them, but because technology means that it is veiled to their parents. So recognize this, right? So not all kids are deliberately keeping stuff with their parents online. They just don't happen to speak to their parents about stuff that they put online. They don't want to add their parents as friends on Facebook, not because there is some deep dark secret that they're deliberately hiding from the parents, but because they just don't feel it's a thing. It's awkward to your parents as friends on Facebook. The point here, though, is if parents fear that there is a sphere of the child's life that is forever denied to them, that is the thing that fuels the parents' restrictions on the child. What else did they tell us? They said some children are fucked over by their parents, and these parents are the worst. We told you that in these cases, right? Obviously, it's true. We have to take the minority of the cases where kids leave their household. We accelerate that process, possibly. But on the other hand, it's also plausible that some parents learn to love, even if, or change their ideation of who the child was. This is obviously possible, right? You're probably likely to be quite loss averse to losing the idea altogether, rather than just kind of changing the idea in your mind. So even in that case, if you didn't really love the person, you just love the idea of that person, you don't understand why that resulted in you killing that idea altogether. Then they were really glib about the harms presented to you from the beginning. And they said, well, policemen are better equipped to do these things, as if somehow the police peering at your life is superior to the parents your life. Because sometimes it wasn't just criminal activity, right? But just things that you thought as a parent your child would not participate in. The police are likely to investigate cyberbullying or sexual grooming before they had a reasonable degree of proof. Parents could intercede in all these cases. But also more importantly, in cases of depression, even if parents were the cause, they often didn't know that they were the cause. And if they did, then they'll probably act better to not be the cause of depression. They never had a solution for that, right? Because your online friends weren't going to pay for therapy, whereas your parents could. But even if they weren't, at least we gave them the opportunity to discuss them and solve the children's problems that were veiled to them.
So you can both sides for a great debate. Please cross your hands. See you later. That hi to everyone in the room. Did we stop, bro? Dude. Like there's no point broadcasting. Yeah, we're not even discussing it. Yeah, good debate.
I was having
Yeah.